They said he had nothing left, just a truck, a past he couldn't escape, and a dog who refused to leave him. Then one morning, a letter arrived, telling him he had inherited an abandoned hotel deep in the northern forest. A place no one wanted. A place people had already forgotten. He almost threw it away until his dog suddenly froze, staring at the photo like it recognized something. So he drove north, not knowing if he was chasing a mistake or something meant for him. And when they finally stood in front of that silent hotel, nothing felt random anymore. Before we begin, tell me where you're watching from, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this. The old pickup truck rested beneath a pale morning sky, its faded paint catching the soft light filtering through tall northern pines. The forest around it was quiet in the way only wilderness could be. Alive, but not loud. A breeze moved gently through the branches, whispering across the land like something ancient and patient. Inside the truck, Rowan Hale stirred. He was a man built for war, even now at 43. 6'1", broad-shouldered, his body carried the quiet strength of someone who had been trained not for show, but for survival. His face was angular, marked by a defined jawline and rough stubble that never quite grew into a full beard. His skin was sun-worn, the kind of tan that didn't fade with seasons. His eyes, blue-gray, held something deeper than fatigue. They held memory, the kind that never fully left. His dark brown hair was cut short, military style, with strands of early gray at the temples. It made him look older in certain light, younger in others, depending on how much the past was weighing on him that day. This morning, it weighed heavy. Rowan blinked awake, breath catching for just a second. Just long enough to remind him that the dream had come again. Gunfire. Sand. The sound of something breaking that couldn't be fixed. He exhaled slowly, forcing himself back into the present. "You're good," he muttered under his breath. Beside him, a German shepherd lifted his head. Ash, 5 years old, black and tan coat, short and dense, built lean and strong like a working dog should be. His body was still, but his eyes were already alert, scanning Rowan, reading him the way he always did. Those deep, focused eyes didn't miss much. Not then. Not now. "I'm good," Rowan added, quieter this time. Ash didn't move immediately. He just watched. He had learned, somewhere between deserts and gunfire, that those words didn't always mean what they were supposed to. After a moment, Rowan reached over and scratched behind the dog's ear. Ash leaned into it slightly, tension easing but not disappearing. They had been living like this for nearly a year. No fixed address, no destination, just roads that led into forests, and forests that led into silence. Rowan pushed the truck door open and stepped out. His boots, old brown leather, worn from years of use, hit gravel with a dull crunch. He stretched his back, the motion slow and deliberate. The small roadside parking lot sat just off a narrow highway cutting through northern Minnesota. A general store stood nearby, its wooden sign faded by years of weather. A couple of cars were parked out front, but no one paid him much attention. Men like Rowan didn't stand out here. They blended in. Ash jumped down from the passenger seat and landed beside him, posture steady, alert but calm. "You hungry?" Rowan asked. Ash's ears twitched. That was answer enough. Inside the store, the air smelled faintly of coffee and old wood. Rowan grabbed a cheap cup and a small pack of jerky. The clerk, a middle-aged woman with tired eyes and graying hair pulled into a loose bun, barely looked up. He paid, stepped back outside, and sat on the tailgate. Ash sat beside him. They shared the jerky in silence. For a few minutes, everything felt still. Not peaceful, but quiet enough. Then the mail truck pulled in. Rowan didn't think much of it at first. He rarely got mail. There wasn't anywhere to send it. Most people who had known him had stopped trying. But the driver stepped out, flipping through a stack of envelopes, then paused. "Rowan Hale?" the man called. Rowan looked up. "Yeah." The driver walked over, holding out a thick envelope. Cream-colored, formal. The kind used by people who dealt in things that mattered. "Need a signature." Rowan took it slowly, something tightening in his chest. He signed. The envelope felt heavier than it should have. Ash stood up. The dog's body shifted. Not aggressive, not defensive, just alert, focused. Rowan frowned slightly. "Easy," he murmured. But Ash wasn't looking at the road. He was looking at the envelope. That was new. Rowan turned it over in his hands. Return address, Henderson and Cole, attorneys at law. He let out a quiet breath. "Great," he muttered. He opened it. Inside, documents, official, clean, precise. He began reading. At first, the words didn't make sense. Then they did. Sole beneficiary, estate, property known as Silver Pine Grand Hotel. Rowan stopped. For a moment, the world around him felt distant. Silver Pine Grand Hotel. The name stirred something faint, like a memory half buried. A relative. A woman who had disappeared into the north years ago. His aunt. He flipped through the documents. Photographs slipped out. A building, large, wooden, standing tall among towering pines. 4 stories. Long balconies stretching across its front. Wide glass windows reflecting sunlight through the trees. Even in the faded images, it looked alive. Once. Now it looked abandoned. The notes confirmed it. Vacant, structural damage, taxes unpaid. And then, Rowan's eyes caught the line at the bottom. Owner must bring property up to county safety code within 90 days or the structure will be condemned and demolished. He let out a slow breath. "Well," he said quietly. Ash stepped closer. The dog lowered his head slightly, and then he froze, completely. His ears lifted, sharp, his eyes locked onto one of the photographs. Not the main one, the last one. A close-up of the hotel's front entrance. Ash didn't blink, didn't move. Rowan frowned. "Ash?" No response. The dog took one slow step forward, then another. His nose hovered just above the photograph. Breathing in. Not like he was smelling paper, like he was remembering something. Rowan felt a strange unease settle in his chest. That didn't make sense. There was no scent here. Just ink. Just paper. But Ash's body told a different story. Tense. Focused. Certain. Rowan reached down and picked up the photo again, studying it more carefully. The entrance. Wooden double doors. Carved beams. Shadows beneath the overhang. Nothing unusual. And yet, Ash let out a low, quiet sound. Not a growl. Not a whine. Something in between. A warning or a recognition. Rowan stared at him. "You've never been there," he said quietly. Ash didn't look at him. He kept staring at the image, like he knew that place, like he had seen it before, or worse, like he knew what was waiting there. The wind shifted suddenly. A cold breeze cut through the warm morning air, rustling the trees above. Ash's head snapped up. He turned, fast, toward the forest behind the parking lot. Every muscle in his body went still. Rowan followed his gaze. Nothing. Just trees, sunlight, silence. But Ash didn't relax. He stepped forward slightly, placing himself between Rowan and the woods, blocking. The same way he had done once, years ago, in a place far from here. Rowan felt it then. That old instinct. The one that never left. Something wasn't right. Not here. Not yet. But soon. The moment passed, or at least, it pretended to. Ash slowly relaxed, though not completely. Rowan folded the documents, sliding them back into the envelope. He looked down at the photograph one last time. A hotel. Broken, forgotten. A problem, a burden. He should walk away, sell it. Forget it. That would be the smart choice. That would be the easy one. He looked at Ash. The dog was still watching the road now, but his ears remained slightly forward. Alert, waiting. Rowan sighed. "You don't like easy, do you?" he said. Ash glanced at him, just for a second. Then back toward the distance. Rowan let out a quiet laugh. Dry, barely there. "Yeah," he muttered. "Me neither." He stood, crumpling the empty jerky wrapper and tossing it into the truck. The envelope stayed in his hand. He looked once more at the road stretching ahead, long, empty, leading north. For the first time in a long time, it didn't feel like running. It felt like something else. Something closer to direction. Rowan opened the driver's door. Ash jumped into the passenger seat without hesitation. The engine turned over with a rough growl. Rowan rested his hand on the steering wheel for a moment. Then, he spoke softly. "Let's go see what she left us." Ash's tail thumped once against the seat. The truck pulled onto the road, and behind them, the forest stood still again. Quiet, patient, as if it had been waiting. The road narrowed as Rowan drove deeper into the north. Tall pines closed in on both sides, their trunks straight and endless, like silent sentinels watching over something older than memory. Sunlight filtered through the canopy in broken beams, turning the forest floor into a shifting pattern of gold and shadow. Ash sat upright in the passenger seat, still and focused. Not restless, not anxious, just aware. The farther they drove, the quieter the world became, the kind of quiet that didn't feel empty, but waiting. Rowan kept both hands on the wheel, his posture relaxed, but his eyes constantly scanning. Old habits didn't fade. They settled in the bones. "You feel it too?" he murmured. Ash didn't look at him, but his ears tilted forward slightly. That was answer enough. The sign for Briar Glen appeared just past a bend in the road. Population 1,284. The numbers had been painted over more than once. Now they looked like a guess. Rowan slowed the truck as he entered the town. At first glance, Briar Glen wasn't broken. It was preserved. Old wooden storefronts lined the main street. A diner with fogged windows, a bait shop with faded posters in the glass. A gas station that looked like it hadn't changed since the early 90s. Everything was clean. Everything was intact. But something was missing. Movement. A man stood outside the diner, mid-50s, stocky build, gray beard trimmed short. He paused mid-conversation when Rowan's truck passed. His eyes followed it, not with curiosity, but with quiet calculation. A woman stepped out of the general store, thin, wearing a worn sweater despite the mild weather. She stopped, watching too. Ash noticed. His body shifted just slightly, upright, alert, eyes moving from one figure to another, not aggressive, just tracking. Rowan parked near the edge of the street. "Friendly place," he muttered. Ash gave a soft exhale. They stepped out. The air smelled different here. Pine, yes, but also lake water, faintly mineral, something colder beneath the surface. Rowan adjusted the strap of his Eberle stock pack and looked around. That's when she approached. Mara Bellamy moved like someone who knew the land better than most people knew their own homes. She was in her early 30s, about 5'6", lean but strong, with the kind of build that came from walking miles of uneven ground instead of lifting weights. Her moss green Ranger parka was worn but well kept, zipped halfway over a gray knit sweater. Dark outdoor pants tucked into waterproof boots. A small pack hung from her shoulder, likely carrying maps, radio, and things that mattered. Her hair, chestnut brown, was tied low at the back of her neck. A few loose strands caught the sunlight. Her eyes were sharp, observant, the kind that didn't trust easily, but noticed everything. "You're not from around here," she said, stopping a few feet away. Her voice was calm, not confrontational, just certain. Rowan nodded once. "Passing through?" Mara's gaze dropped briefly to Ash. The dog stood at Rowan's side, still, composed, but watching her with quiet intensity. "Military?" she asked. Rowan didn't answer immediately, then, "Used to be." She gave a small nod, like that confirmed something she had already suspected. "You heading somewhere specific?" Rowan hesitated. Then he pulled the folded photograph from his jacket and handed it to her. Mara looked down. Her expression didn't change much, but her eyes did. "Silver Pine," she said quietly. Not a question. Rowan studied her. "You know it?" "Everyone here does," she replied. She handed the photo back. "For different reasons." There was a pause. Wind moved through the trees at the edge of town. Ash shifted slightly. Mara noticed that too. "That dog of yours," she said. "He's not just a pet." Rowan shook his head. "K9. Thought so." She glanced once more toward the road leading out of town, north, deeper into the forest. "You planning to stay there?" she asked. "Not planning anything yet." Mara exhaled slowly. "That place," she began, then stopped. Rowan waited. She looked at him again, measuring something. "It used to be the heart of this town," she said finally. "People came from all over. Fishing, hiking, recovery stays. Quiet kind of place. Good kind." "What happened?" Mara's lips pressed together slightly. "No one agrees on that." A voice called out from across the street. "Hey, Mara." An older man approached, walking slower than he probably used to, but steady, Jonah Creed. Late 60s, maybe early 70s. Tall once, now slightly bent with age. His brown canvas jacket hung loose over a faded flannel shirt. Gray trousers, worn boots. His face carried deep lines, not just from time, but from watching things fade. His eyes were pale and tired. "You're talking about the hotel again?" he asked, stopping beside them. Mara gave a small shrug. "He showed up with a photo." Jonah looked at Rowan. Really looked. There was something different about the way he did it. Not suspicion, recognition. "Your family," Jonah said. Rowan stiffened slightly. "My aunt." Jonah nodded slowly. She was stubborn. There was no insult in it, just fact. "She kept that place going longer than anyone expected," he continued, "even after people stopped coming." "Why did they stop?" Rowan asked. Jonah looked past him, toward the forest. "Things change," he said simply. Then, after a pause, "Sometimes people get scared of what they don't understand." Ash shifted. His ears lifted slightly. Jonah noticed. "He's picking something up already," the old man said quietly. Rowan frowned. "Picking up what?" Jonah didn't answer. Instead, he stepped closer. "Just don't ignore him," he said. "Dogs like that, they know when something's off." Ash moved suddenly, not aggressive, not panicked, but deliberate. He stepped away from Rowan, just a few feet, and turned toward the road leading out of town. His body went still. Then he sat, not casually, not resting, but planted, like a marker, like he had decided, this is where we go. Rowan stared at him. "Ash?" The dog didn't move, didn't look back. He just faced the road, waiting. Jonah's voice dropped slightly. "He's not choosing a direction," the old man said. "He's remembering one." The moment lingered. Then Ash stood, calm again, as if nothing had happened. Rowan exhaled slowly. "Yeah," he muttered. "That's new." Mara crossed her arms. "You said you weren't planning anything," she said. Rowan glanced at the road, then back at her. "Plans change?" They drove out of Briar Glen not long after. The road narrowed even further, turning from pavement to gravel, then from gravel to packed dirt. Trees grew taller, closer. The light shifted. Still bright, but heavier somehow. The lake appeared first, a wide stretch of clear water reflecting the sky, broken only by the ripples of wind and the distant outline of a collapsed wooden dock. Then, the hotel. Silver Pine Grand Hotel stood at the edge of the trees, overlooking the lake like something that had refused to fall, even after everything else had. 4 stories, wood and stone, long balconies stretching across the front, large glass windows, some shattered, some still intact, catching the late afternoon light. It wasn't just abandoned. It was watching. Rowan slowed the truck to a stop. For a moment, neither he nor Ash moved. Then Ash stepped out first. His posture changed immediately, lower, more focused. He moved a few steps forward, then stopped, ears forward, eyes locked on the building. Rowan followed. The wind carried the scent of pine, and something else, faint, metallic, old. "Home sweet home," Rowan said under his breath. Ash didn't react. He took one slow step forward, then another. Then he froze. A low sound rumbled in his chest. Not loud, but certain. Rowan turned. "What is it?" Ash's gaze shifted, not to the front doors, not to the windows, but to the side of the building, toward a section where the wall met the ground, where shadows pooled deeper than they should have in full daylight. Rowan felt it then. That same feeling. From the road, from the photo, from something he couldn't explain. This place wasn't empty. Maybe not in the way people meant, but not empty. He reached for the keys in his pocket, cold metal against his fingers. Behind him, the forest stood silent. Ahead of him, the hotel waited, and beside him, Ash took one step forward. Ready. The front doors of Silver Pine Grand Hotel opened with a long, reluctant groan. Dust lifted into the air as Rowan Hale pushed his way inside, boots stepping onto wood that had not felt weight in years. The sound echoed, sharp, hollow, then disappeared into the stillness. The lobby stretched wide before him. It had once been beautiful. A grand staircase curved up to the second floor, its railing carved with intricate patterns now dulled by time. A chandelier hung above, its glass crystals clouded with dust. Old leather chairs sat scattered across the room like forgotten conversations. And yet, the place did not feel dead. It felt paused. Rowan stood there for a moment, letting his eyes adjust, his senses settle. His breathing slowed, not from comfort, but from habit. He had learned long ago that stepping into an unknown space meant listening first. Behind him, Ash entered. The German shepherd moved differently now, slower, more deliberate. His paws made soft, controlled sounds against the floor, each step measured. His head lowered slightly, nose working, drawing in the stale air like a map. 5 years old. Built for detection, for tracking, for finding what others missed. And right now, he was searching. Rowan closed the door behind them. The sound of the latch clicking into place echoed louder than it should have. "Let's see what we got," Rowan muttered. They moved deeper into the lobby. Dust shifted beneath Rowan's boots, leaving clear prints behind him. He glanced briefly at the reception desk, an old wooden counter with a rack of keys behind it. One key remained. Room 17. He noted it, filed it away, moved on. Ash did not. The dog paused near the desk, nose lifting, then lowering again. He circled once, slow, then stopped. But instead of staying, he turned and walked toward the hallway behind the lobby. Rowan watched him. That way, huh? Ash didn't wait. The hallway was narrower, dimmer. Light from broken windows barely reached this far. The air felt different here, cooler, heavier. The scent of old wood mixed with something faintly metallic, almost hidden beneath layers of time. Rowan stepped carefully. The floor creaked beneath him, but not evenly. That was the first thing he noticed. Some sections groaned under his weight. Others barely made a sound. He stopped, shifted his weight, pressed down. There, a hollow note. Subtle, but there. Rowan crouched, running his hand across the floorboards. Most were dark oak, worn smooth by decades of use. But a section near the wall, lighter, newer, or at least replaced. He leaned closer. Nails, different pattern, more recent. Someone's been busy, he murmured. Ash stepped beside him, then sat, not resting, waiting. Ash lifted one paw, held it in the air, then placed it gently, exactly, on a single board. Not scratching, not digging, just pressing. Rowan's eyes narrowed. Ash? The dog looked at him. And for a brief second, there was something in that gaze, not instinct, not training, something older, like recognition, like he wasn't finding this place. He was remembering it. The moment passed. Ash lowered his paw. Rowan exhaled slowly. All right, he said. Let's see. He stood and moved back toward the lobby. Behind the reception desk, he found what he needed. A maintenance closet. Inside, rusted tools, broken furniture, a coil of old rope, and a crowbar. Rowan tested its weight. Solid enough. He returned to the hallway. Ash hadn't moved. Still beside that same board. Still waiting. You've got a good nose, Rowan said quietly. He slid the crowbar under the edge. Pushed. Nothing. He adjusted. Pressed harder. Crack. The first nail gave. Another push. Another crack. The board lifted slightly, dust rising around it. Ash leaned forward. Focused. Rowan pulled the plank free. Beneath it, not dirt, not empty space. Wood. A second layer. But this one had something different. A small metal ring, set flush into the surface. Rowan stared at it. Well, he muttered, that's not standard construction. He hooked the crowbar through the ring. Pulled. For a moment. Nothing. Then, a low grinding sound. The panel shifted and lifted. Cold air rose from below. Ash stepped forward immediately, nose dipping toward the opening. Rowan crouched beside him, pulling a flashlight from his pack. He clicked it on. The beam cut through the darkness. Stone, steps, narrow, descending. Not part of the original hotel. This had been built separately, hidden. Of course it was, Rowan said under his breath. Ash looked back at him. Just once, then started down. Hey, easy, Rowan said, following. The air changed as they descended. Colder, damp. The smell of dust gave way to something else. Mineral, subtle. But there. The steps ended after about 15 feet. They stepped into a corridor. Stone walls. Reinforced with old wooden beams. Not polished, not decorative. Functional. Built to last. Rowan moved slowly, flashlight sweeping the space. Wooden crates lined one side of the wall, rotted with age, faded lettering barely visible. He brushed one with his hand. Property of Silver Pine Therapeutic Division. Rowan blinked. Therapeutic, he repeated. Ash moved ahead. The dog's body was tense now, but not from fear, from focus. They passed a doorway. Then another. Rooms, small. Inside, stone basins, metal pipes, hooks along the walls. Rowan stepped into one, ran his light across it. This wasn't storage, he said quietly. It clicked then. Mara's words. People came here to recover, not just to rest, to heal. Rowan exhaled slowly. Someone didn't want this place found, he added. Ash barked once, sharp, short, then moved on. At the end of the corridor, a door, thick, metal, old, a wheel handle at its center. Rowan approached it, tested it, locked. Of course. He glanced down. Ash was sniffing near the base. Then, the dog nudged something with his nose. Rowan crouched, reached, pulled it free. A small object, wrapped in cloth. Inside, a notebook, leather, cracked with age. Rowan opened it. The first page read, Evelyn Hale, his aunt. He flipped forward. Entries, dates, years ago. His eyes moved quickly, then stopped. They offered again today. Said the land was more valuable than I understood. They don't see what this place is meant to be. Rowan swallowed, turned the page. The last entry, written shakier. If anyone finds this, do not sell. What's under this place is not for men like them. Rowan closed the notebook slowly. Ash stood beside him, still, watching. Rowan looked back at the metal door, then at the tunnel behind them, then at the notebook in his hand. Yeah, he said quietly. I think we just found the reason. He stood, rested his hand briefly on Ash's back. You did good. Ash leaned slightly into the touch, just for a second, then pulled away, alert again, listening. Rowan followed his gaze. The tunnel, silent, but not empty, not anymore. Rowan turned off his flashlight. Darkness swallowed the space. They stood there, man and dog, breathing, listening, waiting. The darkness in the tunnel no longer felt empty. It pressed, not with fear, but with presence. Rowan Hale stood still for a moment, letting his breathing slow, letting his mind sharpen the way it used to before a mission. His hand rested lightly on Ash's back, feeling the subtle tension beneath the dog's coat. Ash wasn't relaxed, not even close. The German shepherd stood with his weight shifted slightly forward, ears locked toward the corridor behind them, body coiled. Not ready to flee, but ready to act. Rowan turned his flashlight back on. The beam cut through the black. All right, he murmured. We don't stay still. Ash moved immediately, not toward the stairs. Forward, deeper. The corridor narrowed, then curved slightly, the stone walls growing rougher, more natural. The wooden reinforcements gave way to bare rock, damp in places, glistening faintly where mineral deposits clung to the surface. The air changed again. Warmer. Not much, but enough. Rowan noticed it instantly. That's new, he said quietly. Ash didn't respond, but his pace quickened. They passed another room, larger than the others. Inside, Rowan saw more clearly now. Stone basins, medical equipment, rust-eaten frames of what had once been treatment tables. Hooks along the walls, a shelf filled with glass bottles, most shattered, some intact but clouded with age. He stepped inside, swept the light across the room, and then stopped. There, Mounted on the far wall, partially obscured by dust and decay, was a plaque. Rowan wiped it clean with his sleeve. The engraved words emerged slowly. Silver Pine Recovery Wing, established 1963. Rowan stared at it. Recovery. Not luxury, not tourism. This place had been built for something else. He exhaled slowly. Not just a hotel, he murmured. Ash barked once, short, sharp, calling him back. The tunnel opened further ahead. The space widened. And then, the sound reached them. Faint, soft, but unmistakable. Water. Rowan's grip on the flashlight tightened. He moved forward. Ash was already there, at the edge, waiting. The beam of light swept forward and caught something that didn't belong underground. Steam, rising slowly, curling into the air like breath. Rowan stepped closer, and then he saw it. A pool, natural, carved into the stone by time itself. Clear water stretched across the cavern floor, glowing faintly under the beam. The surface was still, except for the gentle ripple where water flowed in from a narrow opening in the rock wall. The stone around it was coated in pale mineral streaks, white, silver, faint green. And the air. Warm, not hot, but alive. Rowan knelt at the edge, dipped his fingers into the water. He paused, then frowned slightly. Warm, he said under his breath. Not possible. Not this far north. Not this deep. He rubbed the water between his fingers. No chemical smell. Nothing artificial. Just natural. Ash stepped forward carefully, lowering his head. He sniffed, paused, then drank. Once, twice, then lifted his head again, alert, but not rejecting it. Rowan watched him. You trust it, he said quietly. Ash's tail moved once, slow, certain. Rowan reached into his jacket and pulled out the notebook. He flipped through the pages again, faster this time. Scanning, searching. Then, he found it. A page near the middle. Older writing. Neater, less rushed. Confirmed mineral presence. Unusual heat retention. Early tests show regenerative properties. Rowan's eyes narrowed. Recommend limited exposure only. If this is discovered, it will not remain ours. His jaw tightened. He turned the page. Different handwriting, same book. Report submitted. Results altered. They are coming back. Rowan froze. Altered. The word hung there, heavy, deliberate. He looked up slowly. The cavern, the water, the silence. This wasn't hidden because it was worthless, he said quietly. Ash watched him. Rowan's voice dropped. It was hidden because it was too valuable. Ash suddenly stiffened. Completely. Not a gradual shift. Instant. His ears snapped toward the tunnel. His body lowered. A low, deep growl rolled through his chest. Not loud, but final. Rowan didn't move. Didn't speak. He turned his head slowly. Listening. At first, nothing. Then, a sound. Faint. Footsteps. Not echoing like old wood. Soft. Careful. Someone was walking above them. Rowan's breathing slowed automatically. His body adjusted. Not fear. Recognition. This wasn't imagination. This was real. And they were not alone anymore. Rowan clicked off the flashlight. Darkness swallowed the cavern. Only the faint shimmer of the water remained. Ash stepped closer to him, silent, ready. Rowan leaned down slightly, whispering, "Stay." Ash didn't move, but his muscles tightened. Rowan reached slowly into his pack, pulled out something old, simple, a folding knife. Not ideal, but enough. The footsteps above paused. Then, a faint scraping sound. Wood. Being moved. Rowan's eyes narrowed. "They found it," he whispered. Ash's growl deepened. Light appeared suddenly at the far end of the tunnel. Flashlight beams, moving, searching. Voices followed. Low, careless. "They're down there," one of them said. The voice was rough, impatient. A man used to getting what he wanted without asking twice. Another voice answered. "Boss said the tunnel was here. Didn't say it'd be open." The first man stepped into view. He was in his late 30s, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a dark jacket and heavy boots. His face was rough, sharp cheekbones, short stubble, eyes that scanned everything but saw nothing beneath the surface. A man built for force, not thought. Behind him came another, shorter, thinner, nervous energy in his movements. His eyes darted constantly, like he expected something to go wrong. Rowan stayed in the shadows, watching, waiting. Ash didn't move, didn't bark, just waited. The first man stepped forward. His flashlight beam swept across the cavern and stopped. On the water. For a moment. He said nothing. Then, "Well, I'll be damned." The second man stepped beside him. "What is that?" The first man let out a low laugh. "That's why Kane wants the place." Rowan felt it then. Cold, clear. Victor Kane didn't know everything, but he knew enough. The second man took a step closer to the pool. "That stuff real?" The first man shrugged. "Doesn't matter. It's valuable. That's all that matters." Ash moved. Just an inch. Silent. But enough. Rowan's hand pressed lightly against his neck. "Wait," he whispered. The first man turned. His flashlight beam swept again. Closer this time. Rowan shifted his position slightly, just enough to stay out of direct light. The second man frowned. "Thought I heard something." The first man shook his head. "Place is falling apart. You're hearing ghosts." He stepped closer to the water, reached down, dipped his fingers in, then pulled back slightly. "Warm," he muttered. The second man's eyes widened. "Underground?" The first man smiled. Now, he believed. Ash couldn't hold anymore. A low, sharp bark broke the silence. The sound exploded through the cavern. The two men spun instantly. "Who's there?" Rowan stepped out of the shadows, slow, controlled. "Wrong place," he said calmly. The first man's expression hardened. "Well, look at that." He straightened. "You the owner?" Rowan didn't answer. Ash stepped forward, between them. The second man shifted back slightly. "Dog looks mean." Rowan's voice stayed level. "He's not the problem." The first man smirked. "Yeah? Then what is?" Rowan met his eyes. "I am." The moment stretched. Tension thickened. Then, the first man moved. Fast. Too fast for talk. Ash exploded forward. A blur of muscle and instinct. The impact knocked the man back. The second one lunged. Rowan stepped in. The knife flashed once. Not to kill. To stop. The second man stumbled back, swearing. The first man shoved Ash off, grabbing at his sleeve. And then, a flash of steel, a blade. Ash yelped. The sound cut through Rowan like a bullet. Time snapped. Rowan moved. No hesitation. A hard strike. Wood against bone. The man staggered. The second grabbed him. "Let's go!" They backed toward the tunnel. Fast, retreating. Not defeated, but not staying. Their footsteps faded. Gone. Silence returned, but not the same silence. Rowan dropped to his knees. "Ash!" The dog stood there, breathing hard. Blood darkened the fur along his shoulder. Not deep, but real. Rowan's hands were steady now, more than they had been all day. "Easy," he said softly. Ash leaned into him slightly, still alert, still watching the tunnel. even now. Rowan wrapped the wound as best he could. Tight, clean, controlled. His jaw clenched. "They knew," he said quietly. Ash didn't respond, but his eyes did. Focused, certain. Rowan looked back at the water, at the cavern, at the place his aunt had hidden, then back at the tunnel. "They don't know everything," he added. His voice was calm now, cold, decided. The night settled over Silver Pine with a deceptive calm. From the outside, the old hotel looked almost peaceful beneath the pale glow of the moon. Broken windows reflected silver light, and the lake below lay still as glass, mirroring the dark outline of the forest. It was the kind of quiet that might have fooled someone who didn't know better. But Rowan Hale knew better. He sat on the floor of the lobby, his back against one of the old wooden pillars, a small fire crackling in the stone fireplace nearby. The warmth barely reached him, but it wasn't the cold that kept him awake. It was the weight of what he now understood. Ash lay a few feet away on an old blanket Rowan had pulled from one of the rooms, upstairs. The German shepherd's injured shoulder had been cleaned and wrapped as tightly as Rowan could manage with what little he had. Even wounded, the dog didn't fully rest. His eyes remained half open, tracking every shift in sound, every whisper of wind that slipped through the broken structure. Rowan watched him for a while. "You should sleep," he said quietly. Ash didn't move. Of course he didn't. Rowan let out a slow breath and leaned his head back against the wood. Above him, the building creaked softly, the old beams adjusting to the drop in temperature as night deepened. It was a familiar kind of noise, one that might have passed unnoticed to most, but to Rowan, it carried patterns. And patterns mattered. Something about the rhythm felt wrong. Not louder, not sharper, just out of place. He straightened slightly, listening more carefully. The fire popped behind him, sending a brief flicker of light across the walls. Shadows shifted. The air moved. Then it came. A smell. Faint at first, then stronger. Smoke. Rowan was on his feet before the thought fully formed. Ash. The dog was already moving. They turned toward the hallway, the same hallway that led to the hidden trapdoor. A thin line of gray curled along the ceiling, drifting slowly at first, then gathering thickness as it moved toward the lobby. Rowan's jaw tightened. "No," he muttered. He stepped forward quickly, boots hitting the wooden floor in sharp, controlled strides. The air grew warmer with each step, the smell of burning wood thickening in his lungs. At the far end of the corridor, a dull orange glow flickered. Fire. And not a small one. The flames had already taken hold of the wall near the trapdoor, licking upward along the dry timber with alarming speed. Years of neglect had turned the building into kindling, and now it was feeding the blaze like it had been waiting for this moment. Rowan stopped just short of the heat. His eyes scanned the area. The origin point. Not random, not spread from outside. It had started here, right above the hidden entrance. He exhaled slowly, the realization settling in with cold clarity. This wasn't an accident. Ash let out a low, sharp bark, his body angled toward the spreading flames, but not retreating. He knew too. Rowan turned, moving quickly back toward the lobby. "We don't have time," he said under his breath. He reached the front door and grabbed the handle. Twisted. Nothing. Locked. From the outside. Rowan's expression hardened. Of course. He moved to the back exit. Same result. The handle didn't budge. The heat was rising now, fast enough that the air felt heavier with every breath. Smoke thickened along the ceiling, creeping downward in slow, suffocating waves. Ash barked again, louder this time. Rowan turned. The dog wasn't looking at the doors anymore. He was looking at Rowan. Then, Without hesitation, Ash moved. Grabbing the sleeve of Rowan's jacket with his teeth and pulling hard, Rowan stumbled half a step. "Ash, what are you—" The dog didn't let go. He pulled again, more urgently this time, dragging him back toward the hallway. And then it clicked. The trapdoor. Rowan's eyes widened. Right. They ran. The fire had already spread further along the corridor, flames climbing the walls, chewing through the beams with a hungry crackling sound. Smoke filled the space, burning Rowan's throat as he pushed forward, one arm raised instinctively to shield his face. Ash didn't hesitate. Even injured, he moved with purpose, leading straight to the section of floor Rowan had opened earlier. Rowan dropped to his knees, gripping the crowbar and ripping the loose boards aside. The metal ring came into view, already warm from the heat above. He hooked it, pulled. The panel resisted for a split second, then gave way. Hot air rushed upward as the hidden passage opened beneath them. "Go," Rowan ordered. Ash jumped first. Rowan followed immediately, dropping into the darkness below and slamming the panel shut above them. For a moment, the world narrowed to sound. The roar of fire overhead, the groaning of wood as it began to collapse, the distant crack of something giving way. Dust fell from the ceiling of the tunnel in soft, constant streams. Rowan leaned back against the cold stone wall, coughing hard as he fought to steady his breathing. His chest burned, his throat raw from smoke, but his mind was already moving again, assessing, calculating. Ash stood beside him, panting but upright, his injured shoulder trembling slightly under the strain. Rowan reached out, resting a hand against the dog's neck. "You did it again," he said hoarsely. Ash nudged him lightly, as if to say it wasn't worth mentioning. Above them, the hotel burned, and there was nothing Rowan could do about it. For a brief second, as the roar of the fire echoed through the stone, Rowan closed his eyes, and in that darkness, he was somewhere else. Sand beneath his boots, heat pressing down from above, the sound of gunfire cutting through the air, too loud, too close. The moment before everything broke apart. He had felt it then too, that same pull, that same choice. Stay and risk everything, or walk away and live with it. Back then, he had almost walked. Almost. Rowan opened his eyes. Ash was watching him. Not demanding, not pushing, just there, waiting. The same way he had been years ago. And in that quiet look, there was something steady. Something unshaken by fire or fear or the past that refused to let go. It wasn't an order. It was something stronger. A reminder. Rowan exhaled slowly, the tension in his chest shifting into something sharper, more focused. "We're not done," he said quietly. Ash's tail moved once. They moved deeper into the tunnel, away from the heat above, toward the cavern where the underground spring lay waiting. The air grew cooler again as they descended, the warmth of the fire fading behind them. When they reached the pool, Rowan stopped. The water still shimmered, untouched, as if the chaos above had never reached it. Steam curled gently into the air, soft and constant, unchanged. Rowan knelt at the edge, splashing water onto his face, letting it wash away the ash and the sting in his eyes. The warmth eased his breathing slightly, grounding him in the present. Ash drank again, slower this time. Careful. Rowan sat back on his heels, staring at the water, at what it meant, at what his aunt had tried to protect. "They burned it," he said quietly. Not in anger, not yet. Just fact. Ash stood beside him. Rowan looked down at the dog, at the bandage, at the steady way he held himself despite the pain. For a moment, just a moment, Rowan thought about leaving. He could do it. Walk out of this tunnel, find another road, another place, another life where none of this followed him. He had done it before. Walked away from things that mattered because staying meant facing something he wasn't ready for. The thought came easily. Too easily. Rowan closed his eyes briefly, then opened them again. Ash was still there, still watching. Not asking, not expecting, just waiting to see what he would choose. Rowan let out a slow breath. "Yeah," he murmured. "I know." He pushed himself to his feet, shoulders squaring slightly as something settled into place inside him. Not anger, not yet, but direction. Above them, the hotel was gone, but the mountain remained. And so did the truth buried inside it. Rowan looked toward the tunnel that led back up, then toward the deeper passage where the water flowed from the rock, then back at Ash. "Let him think he finished it," Rowan said quietly. Ash's ears twitched. Rowan gave a faint, almost humorless smile. "People like that don't understand something," he added. He glanced once more at the water. "At the end of the day, you can burn wood." His eyes hardened slightly. "But you can't burn what's underneath." Ash stepped forward. Ready, Rowan followed. And for the first time since arriving in Briar Glen, he wasn't just reacting anymore. He was choosing. The road out of the forest felt different this time. Rowan Hale drove in silence, both hands steady on the wheel, his eyes fixed on the narrow stretch of asphalt cutting through the northern trees. Behind them, the ruins of Silver Pine Grand Hotel still smoldered, sending thin columns of smoke into the morning sky. The scent clung to his clothes, to his skin, as if the fire had followed him out of the mountains. Ash sat in the passenger seat, posture upright despite the bandage wrapped around his shoulder. The dog's breathing had steadied, but his movements remained careful, each shift of his body deliberate. Pain hadn't slowed his awareness. If anything, it had sharpened it. Rowan glanced at him briefly. "You're stubborn," he said quietly. Ash's ears twitched once. That was enough. They drove for nearly 2 hours before the forest began to thin and the signs of the outside world returned: power lines, wider roads, distant rooftops. The town ahead wasn't Briar Glen. It was larger, busier, louder in a way Rowan hadn't experienced in months. Denver. The shift in atmosphere was immediate. Cars moved faster. People walked with purpose. The air carried noise, voices, engines, life that didn't stop to listen. Rowan parked in front of a modest brick building with a small sign near the entrance: Colorado Geological Institute. The building itself wasn't impressive. 2 stories, aging brick, narrow windows. But it carried something more important than appearance: authority. Rowan stepped out of the truck, grabbing the metal bottle from his pack. Inside it, carefully sealed, was water from the underground spring. He had filled it just before leaving the cavern, his hands steady even as the hotel burned above him. Ash followed, slower now, but refusing to be left behind. Inside, the air smelled faintly of paper and chemicals. A fluorescent light buzzed overhead, casting a pale glow across the room. Behind a cluttered desk sat an older man, late 60s or early 70s, with thin gray hair combed back and glasses perched low on his nose. Dr. Elias Wren. His frame was lean, almost fragile, but there was something sharp in his eyes, an alertness that hadn't faded with age. His clothes were simple: a gray cardigan over a light shirt, worn trousers, polished but old shoes. He looked like someone who had spent a lifetime studying things most people never noticed. He glanced up as Rowan approached. "You're not scheduled," he said, voice calm but edged with curiosity. Rowan placed the bottle on the desk. "I need this tested." Dr. Wren looked at the bottle, then back at Rowan, then down at Ash. The dog stood quietly beside Rowan, his gaze fixed, unblinking. "That animal of yours," Wren said slowly. "He's watching me like I've done something wrong." Rowan didn't smile. He usually has a reason. Wren adjusted his glasses, studying them both for a moment longer before sighing. "All right," he said. "Let's see what you've brought me." He took the bottle and disappeared into the back lab. Rowan waited. Time stretched. 10 minutes, 15. Ash lay down near Rowan's feet, but his head remained lifted, ears angled toward the hallway behind the desk. Then the door opened. Dr. Wren stepped back into the room, and something had changed in his face. The calm was gone, replaced by something sharper. "Where did you get this?" he asked. Rowan didn't answer immediately. "In the mountains," he said finally. Wren placed a printed sheet on the desk. "You understand what this is?" he asked. Rowan shook his head slightly. "Tell me." Wren leaned forward, his voice lowering. "This water contains high concentrations of lithium, magnesium, and rare mineral compounds, typically found in therapeutic geothermal springs. But that's not the remarkable part." Rowan's eyes narrowed. "The structure of these minerals," Wren continued, tapping the paper, "suggests natural stability. If the source is large enough, and if it's sustainable, this isn't just valuable." He paused. "It's transformative." Rowan felt something shift in his chest. "How valuable?" he asked. Wren hesitated, then said quietly, "Hundreds of millions." The words hung in the air. But Rowan wasn't looking at the number. He was thinking about the rooms underground, the basins, the patients who had once come there to heal. "This wasn't meant to be sold," he murmured. Wren studied him carefully. "No," the old man said. "It wasn't." Ash rose suddenly. Not abruptly, not violently, but with quiet certainty. He turned his head toward the front window. Rowan followed his gaze. Across the street, beneath a flickering streetlight, a black SUV idled. Engine running, windows tinted. Still, watching. Rowan didn't move, didn't speak, but something inside him settled into place. "They found us," he said softly. Ash's body tensed. Not afraid, ready, Rowan turned back to Wren. "I need copies of that report," he said. Wren frowned. "You're not thinking of going public with this, are you?" Rowan met his eyes. "Yes." Wren straightened. "That's not a small decision. People will come after that land." "They already have." Wren studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Give me 10 minutes." By the time Rowan stepped back outside, the SUV was gone. But that didn't mean anything. It meant they were moving. He climbed into the truck, Ash settling beside him. "Change of plan," Rowan said. Ash's tail moved once. 2 hours later, Rowan stood in a small media office, the hum of cameras and quiet conversations filling the space. The room smelled of coffee and stress, the kind that came from chasing stories that mattered. A young woman approached him, holding a microphone. Her name was Claire Donovan, early 30s, tall and slender, with blonde hair pulled into a tight ponytail and sharp blue eyes that missed nothing. She moved with confidence, but there was something else beneath it. A determination that came from having fought to be taken seriously in rooms that didn't always welcome her. "You're the veteran," she said. Rowan nodded. "And the dog?" "Ash." Claire glanced at him, then at the bandage. "He looks like he's been through something." Rowan's voice remained steady. "We both have." Claire gave a small nod. "All right," she said, lifting the microphone. "Let's tell your story." The cameras turned on. Lights flickered. And Rowan spoke. He didn't embellish, didn't dramatize. He simply told the truth. About the hotel, the fire, the tunnel, the water. Ash sat beside him the entire time, still, silent, a presence that didn't need explanation. Claire listened, and when Rowan finished, she didn't speak immediately. Then she turned to the camera. "What you're hearing," she said clearly, "is a claim that could reshape not just a town, but an entire region. A hidden geothermal spring beneath a destroyed property, potentially worth hundreds of millions and possibly the target of deliberate destruction." She paused. "Mr. Hale has provided verified test results from the Colorado Geological Institute." She held up the report. "And now, he's inviting anyone to come and see it for themselves." The story spread faster than Rowan expected. By morning, it was everywhere. Local news, online articles, clips shared across platforms. People were talking about the veteran, about the dog, about the hotel that burned, about the secret that had survived, and about the man who had tried to bury it. When Rowan returned to Briar Glen, the town was no longer quiet. Cars lined the road. Reporters stood near the edge of the property. Locals gathered in small groups, watching, whispering, waiting. The forest hadn't changed. The lake was still. But the town was awake. Mara stood near the front, arms crossed, her expression unreadable. Jonah stood beside her, leaning slightly on a cane Rowan hadn't seen before. They both looked at him. Not surprised. Not anymore. "You didn't run," Mara said. Rowan shook his head. "Not this time." Jonah gave a slow nod. "Good," he said. In the distance, a line of black vehicles approached. Victor Kane had arrived. But this time, he wasn't stepping into silence. He was stepping into light. And for the first time since this began, Rowan understood something clearly. Victor hadn't lost because he was weak. He had lost because the truth no longer belonged to him. Winter had come and gone, and with it, something in the valley had changed. A year earlier, Silver Pine Grand Hotel had stood as a skeleton of memory. Its beams cracked, its windows hollow, its purpose buried beneath dust and silence. Now, as spring settled gently across the northern forest, the structure rose again from the mountainside. Not as a copy of what had been lost, but as something that understood why it had once existed. The new Silver Pine still carried the same bones, wood and stone shaped by human hands, built to endure seasons and storms. But it felt different. The balconies stretched wide across the front, catching the morning light as it filtered through tall pines. Large windows reflected the lake below, no longer broken, no longer empty, but alive with movement inside. Steam curled softly from the lower level, drifting upward into the cool air. The water beneath the mountain had not changed, only the way people chose to see it. Rowan Hale stood near the edge of the property, his hands resting loosely at his sides as he looked out across the valley. The wind moved gently through his jacket, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth, the kind of smell that belonged to a place that still remembered how to breathe. He looked almost the same, 43, broad shoulders, lean strength built from years of discipline that never quite faded. His dark brown hair remained short, touched with early gray at the temples. The stubble along his jaw had not changed, nor had the calm, steady weight in his blue-gray eyes. But something inside him had shifted. The man who had once drifted from place to place, avoiding anything that resembled permanence, now stood in a place that had chosen to keep him. Behind him, the sound of voices drifted across the wooden walkway. Not loud, not chaotic, just present. People had returned, not tourists in the way the old hotel had once welcomed them, but something quieter, more deliberate. Veterans. Men and women who carried the same invisible weight Rowan had once tried to outrun. They moved through the space differently, slower, more aware, as if they understood what this place offered, without needing it explained. A man in his 50s leaned against the railing near the entrance, his posture stiff but not broken. His left hand trembled slightly as he lifted a cup of coffee, but his eyes remained focused, steady. Nearby, a younger woman sat by the edge of the mineral pool, her boots set aside, her feet resting in the warm water as she stared out across the lake, her breathing finally even after what had likely been years of unrest. Silver Pine no longer existed to impress. It existed to restore, and that made all the difference. Rowan turned slightly, his gaze moving toward the lower level where the therapeutic wing had been rebuilt. The design followed the old structure in spirit, but not in secrecy. Stone rooms lined the interior, each fitted with basins fed directly from the underground spring. Pipes carried the mineral-rich water through carefully controlled channels, ensuring that what had once been hidden could now be shared without being exploited. It had taken months of work, legal battles, engineers, doctors, people who believed not in profit, but in purpose. Victor Kane had not disappeared. Men like him rarely did. But the moment Rowan had brought the truth into the open, the balance had shifted. The story had grown larger than any one person's control. The town had stood behind it. The media had stayed long enough to make sure it could not quietly vanish again. Some battles were not won by force. Some were won by refusing to keep quiet. Ash moved before Rowan heard it. The dog, older now by a year, stepped forward with a slower gait than before. The injury to his shoulder had healed, but not perfectly. There was a stiffness in the way he carried himself, a slight hesitation in his stride that had not been there before. And yet, his eyes were unchanged, sharp, focused, certain. Ash stopped near the edge of the balcony and turned his head slightly, looking not at the people below, not at the lake, but at Rowan himself. For a moment the world seemed to narrow. The sound of voices faded. The wind softened. Rowan met his gaze, and in that quiet exchange, something passed between them. Not a command, not a warning, but something deeper, something that had been there since the beginning. Not instinct, not training, recognition. As if Ash had never been searching for something hidden, only guiding Rowan towards something that had always been waiting. Rowan let out a slow breath, his shoulders easing slightly as the tension he had carried for so long finally began to settle into something quieter. "You knew," he said softly. Ash's ears flicked once. The dog didn't move closer, didn't demand anything. He simply stood there, steady as ever, as if the answer didn't need to be spoken. Rowan gave a faint, almost imperceptible smile. "Yeah," he murmured. "I guess you did." Behind them, footsteps approached. Mara Bellamy stepped onto the balcony, her moss-green parka replaced now by a lighter jacket suited for the warmer season, though her posture remained the same. Balanced, grounded, as if she were always aware of where she stood in the world. Her hair was still tied low, though the sunlight caught more of its chestnut tones now, and there was less tension in her expression than there had been when Rowan first arrived. "You're hiding again," she said, not unkindly. Rowan glanced at her. "Observing." Mara raised an eyebrow. "Same thing, depending on how long you do it." Rowan didn't argue. She stepped beside him, looking out over the valley. "It's working," she said after a moment. Rowan followed her gaze. The people below, the movement, the life. "Yeah," he said. "It is." Mara crossed her arms lightly. "You ever think about what happens next?" Rowan considered the question. For a long time, his answer would have been simple. Keep moving. Don't stay. Don't build anything that could be taken away. But now, he shook his head slightly. "Not really." Mara glanced at him. That's new." "Yeah," Rowan said quietly. "It is." Ash moved again, stepping closer this time, settling near Rowan's side. The dog lowered himself carefully, his body relaxing just enough to rest, but not enough to lose awareness. His breathing was slow, steady, his gaze drifting across the landscape in a way that suggested he wasn't guarding anything specific, just everything at once. Rowan reached down, resting his hand gently against the dog's neck. The familiar warmth grounded him. For a long moment, none of them spoke. They didn't need to. The valley stretched out below, alive in a way it hadn't been in decades. The forest remained unchanged, its quiet presence surrounding everything, reminding them that some things endured, whether people noticed or not. Rowan thought about the road, about the years spent moving, never stopping long enough to belong anywhere. He thought about the moment he had almost left. How easy it would have been. Just turn the key, drive, disappear. He exhaled slowly. "You know," he said, his voice low, almost lost to the wind, "I thought I was being handed a problem." Mara glanced at him. "And?" Rowan looked out across the valley again, at the people, at the water, at the place that had refused to stay buried. "I wasn't," he said. His hand rested lightly against Ash's shoulder. "I was being brought somewhere." Ash's tail moved once against the wood. Slow, certain. Rowan's gaze softened. "Not a bad trade," he added quietly. Mara smiled faintly, then stepped back toward the door. "Don't stay up here too long," she said. "People are starting to ask for you." Rowan nodded. "I'll be there." She disappeared inside. Rowan remained where he was. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the trees. The light shifted from gold to something softer, something that felt like an ending and a beginning at the same time. He looked down at Ash. The dog lifted his head slightly, meeting his eyes once more. No urgency, no warning, just presence. Rowan nodded to himself. Then, after a moment, he said quietly, "We made it." Ash didn't respond. He didn't need to. The wind moved through the trees. The voices below continued. And for the first time in a long time, Rowan Hale didn't feel like he was passing through something. He felt like he had arrived. There are moments in life when everything seems lost. When the past feels heavier than the future, and the road ahead looks like it leads nowhere. But sometimes, what we call the end is not an ending at all. It is a quiet turning point, placed there by God, waiting for us to notice. Rowan thought he had lost everything. He believed the war had taken the best parts of him, leaving only silence and distance behind. But what he didn't see, what many of us don't see in our darkest moments, is that God was still guiding him, not with loud signs, but through something simple and faithful. Through a companion who never left, through a path that didn't make sense at first, through a place that seemed broken, but was actually waiting to heal. Maybe you're in a season like that right now. Maybe you feel lost, tired, or unsure of where your life is going. But this story is a reminder that God does not waste pain. He does not abandon you in your hardest moments. Sometimes, He leads you through the wilderness not to lose you, but to bring you exactly where you belong. And sometimes, the miracle is not in what you receive, but in what you are quietly led toward. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to share where you're watching from, or simply write a word in the comments. Your voice matters here. And if you believe in stories of faith, loyalty, and second chances, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next journey. May God bless you, protect you, and guide you wherever you are today.